I'm Donald Robinson. I'm 80 years old. 3 months ago, I signed myself into this nursing home. My kids didn't ask me to. My wife, Virginia, didn't make me. I did it for them, and I should have done it 2 years sooner. Let me tell you what happened. You see, I regret waiting. I regret forcing my 4 children into the impossible position of having to parent their own parent. It cost us 6 months of family tension, secret meetings I wasn't invited to, and worst of all, it almost cost me the peace of mind of making my own choice. Taking control of your own aging is the last, greatest gift you can give your kids. And I almost didn't give it. It started last fall, right after my 80th birthday. Ginny and I were in our house in Willow Creek, the one we raised our kids in. I was a bus driver for 40 years. I'm used to being in control. I told myself I was managing fine, but there were stumbles. I slipped on the porch ice. I forgot a doctor's appointment. Nothing major, I thought. I'd just go fishing to clear my head or lose myself in cooking a big pot of chili, a hobby of mine. But I started to see a new look in my daughter Sarah's eyes when she visited. It wasn't concern anymore. It was calculation. That look was just the beginning. The real wake-up call came from something I overheard. I was in the kitchen, browning meat for my chili. Sarah was in the living room on the phone. Her voice was low, strained. I caught fragments. Dad left the stove on again. Mom won't say anything. We can't just tell him. It would break his heart. I stood there, frozen, wooden spoon in hand. I wasn't a bus driver, a father, a husband in that moment. I was a problem they were discussing in hushed tones. I felt like a ghost in my own home. That secret phone call poisoned everything. It made the next family gathering, which was supposed to be a celebration, feel like a trap. All 4 kids and the grandkids came over for a belated birthday dinner. The air was thick with a false cheer. They asked too many questions. Dad, those basement stairs are steep, huh? You remembering your pills, Pop? My son Tom, the one who inherited my love for golf, made an awkward joke. He said, maybe you should get a condo on a golf course. Be easier. It wasn't a joke. It was a probe. I looked at Ginny. Her hand trembled as she poured the coffee. She was trapped, a silent prisoner between our children's worry and my stubborn pride. I left that dinner feeling hollow, but the true turning point was still waiting for me. A week later, I was in the garage, looking for my old fishing tackle. Behind my tool chest, I found a plain manila folder. It was labeled Parents, Options. My heart sank. Inside were brochures for places like this one, Maple Grove. There were notes in the margins in different handwriting. Sarah's neat script, Tom's quick scrawl, dates, costs, pros, activities, cons. Dad would hate the cafeteria. They'd been having meetings about me, about us, without me. I didn't feel angry. I felt a profound sadness, a deep, aching sadness. I had turned my thoughtful, curious kids into an anxious planning committee. I sat on an old crate in that garage for a long time. Then I took the folder inside. I laid it on our kitchen table, right next to the sugar bowl. Jenny sat down, and her eyes filled with tears before I said a word. "They're just worried, Don," she whispered. I held her hand. Her skin felt thin, like paper. "I know," I said, "but we've let their worry become their burden. We're the parents." We talked for hours. She confessed her fear of being the reason the kids fought. I admitted my fear of losing my independence. For the first time in months, we weren't pretending everything was fine. That conversation changed everything. The next morning, I did what I should have done long ago. I drove to Maple Grove Senior Living alone. I used the same determined focus I used to learn a new bus route. I took the tour. I had lunch in the dining hall. The meatloaf was actually pretty good. I talked to a fellow named Ernie by the putting green. I asked questions. I was curious, not defeated. I saw people living, not just waiting. It wasn't giving up. It was choosing a new road while I still had a clear map, while I still had the energy to drive. I came home with a brochure of my own and a plan. Now I had to call the meeting. I called all 4 kids. "Family meeting, Sunday, 2:00. Be there." I didn't give a reason. The old Donald, the one from a month ago, would have stewed all week, getting angrier and more defensive. The new one, the one who'd sat in that garage and faced the truth, was calm, determined. I had my route mapped. That Sunday I made sure my famous apple pie was cooling on the counter. The smell of cinnamon and sugar filled the house, something familiar and good. Jenny was quiet, wiping the same spot on the kitchen counter over and over. I put a hand on her shoulder. "It's going to be okay," I said. "We're driving the bus this time." She gave me a small, shaky smile. They all filed in, one by one. Sarah, my worrier, Tom, my golfer, Michael and Lisa, the other 2. They looked nervous, like they were waiting for bad news. They sat around our living room, the same room where Sarah had made that phone call. I didn't make them wait. "All right," I said, standing in front of them. I picked up the Maple Grove brochure from the coffee table. I held it up so they could all see it. Then I laid it down, right next to the pie I'd brought in. "Your mother and I have decided. We're moving here, to Maple Grove, next month." The room went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Sarah's eyes went wide. Tom stared at the brochure like he'd never seen it before, even though I knew his handwriting was in the margins of the one I'd found. Michael opened his mouth and then closed it. Lisa just looked from me to Jenny and back. Then it happened. Sarah's hands flew to her mouth and she started to cry. But they weren't sad tears. They were tears of pure, overwhelming relief. Her whole body seemed to sag into the couch. Tom stood up. He's a big man, bigger than me now. He walked over and wrapped his arms around me in a hug so tight I heard a little crack in my back. "Thank you, Dad," he mumbled into my shoulder, his voice thick. "Oh, thank you." That's when I felt it. a physical wave of relief washing through the room, lifting that heavy, awful tension that had been suffocating us for months. It just evaporated. Jenny started crying too, but she was smiling through it. Sarah came over and hugged her, saying, "Oh, Mom, it's going to be so much better. You won't have to worry about the stairs." We spent the rest of the afternoon talking, really talking, not about gutters or grocery delivery or medication schedules. We talked about the grandkids' soccer games. We argued good-naturedly about Tom's golf handicap. I told him he was cheating. We talked about whether my new room would have enough space for my favorite fishing photo, the one with the 30-inch northern I caught on Mille Lacs. We were a family again, not a caregiving committee. We were just us. The next few weeks were a whirlwind, but it was a good kind of busy. It was our project. The kids helped us sort through a lifetime of stuff in that Willow Creek house. There were hard moments, sure. Letting go of my old tool chest hurt. Giving away Jenny's china cabinet was tough. But it was different because we were in charge. We were making the choices. Tom and I took a carload of my old fishing gear to his place for the grandkids. "Someday you'll teach them," I told him, and he just nodded, his eyes a little shiny. Moving day was strange. Walking out of that house for the last time, the one where we'd raised our family. I stood in the empty living room and just listened to the echo. But Jenny took my hand. Her hand wasn't trembling. "Ready to go home?" she asked. And she meant Maple Grove. So that was 3 months ago. I'm sitting here now in my new room. It's smaller than my old house, but it's ours. Jenny's knitting in the chair by the window. My fishing photo is on the wall, and on my dresser is that picture of her from our 55th anniversary. You see, I understand something now that I was too stubborn to see before. My kids love me. They wanted to do the right thing. But by making my aging their problem to solve, I stole their peace. And I stole my own agency. I was a bus driver for 40 years. I knew you had to watch the road ahead, to see the curves and the stops coming. I'd stopped watching my own road. I was so busy insisting I could still drive the old route that I didn't see the bridge was out ahead. Choosing this place on our terms was the last, greatest gift we could give them. It gave them back their roles as our children. It gave Jenny and me the freedom to just be husband and wife again, not two people pretending we weren't scared. And you know what? It's not bad here. I have lunch with Ernie a few times a week. We complain about the cafeteria meatloaf, even though it's pretty good. There's a putting green. Tom comes by and we play 9 holes sometimes. He still beats me, but I'm getting my swing back. Sarah visits and we don't talk about my pills. We talk about her garden. Jenny and I play cards in the common room most evenings. We laugh. We actually laugh. So if you're listening to this and you're around my age, let me give you some direct advice from one old bus driver to another. So if you're listening to this and you're around my age, let me give you some direct advice from one old bus driver to another. Don't wait. Don't wait for the talk. Don't wait for the fall. Don't wait for your kids to have to look at you. with that calculation in their eyes. Because here's the hard truth I finally faced, sitting in that garage with that folder in my hands. I was being selfish. I was clinging to my independence so hard that I was making everyone else a prisoner to my pride. Jenny was a prisoner in a house that was getting too big and too full of hazards. My kids were prisoners to their worry, to the secret meetings and the hushed phone calls. And I was the warden, insisting everything was just fine. The hardest part wasn't the move. It wasn't letting go of the house. The hardest part was that moment of realization. It was looking at Jenny across our kitchen table and seeing not just my wife of 55 years, but a woman who was tired, a woman who was scared to tell me she was scared, because I had made my ability to manage the most important thing, more important than her peace, more important than our kids' peace. I remember one night, about a week after I found the folder, we were in bed, the lights were off. The street light outside our window cast that same pattern on the ceiling it had for 40 years. I thought she was asleep. Then her voice came out of the dark, quiet and thin. "Don?" "Yeah, Jenny. Do you remember that trip we took to the North Shore for our 30th? "Of course I do," I said. We'd rented a little cabin. We'd hiked badly and cooked trout over a fire. "I was thinking about the fire," she said. "How you couldn't get it started. You were so determined. You tried every piece of wood, every bit of kindling. You were out there for an hour, getting more and more frustrated." I laughed a little in the dark. "I remember. I was about to give up and go buy a bag of charcoal. And then I came out," she said, "and I just moved 2 of the logs, just shifted them a little, and the air caught, and the whole thing just bloomed." We were quiet for a minute, listening to the house settle. "You were trying so hard," she whispered. "You were doing everything right, but you were trying to do it all yourself. You just needed to let a little air in." That's when I cried. Not big sobs, just quiet tears that slid down into my pillow, because she was right about the fire and about everything. I'd been trying to do it all myself, to prove I could still drive the bus, still chop the wood, still be the man who provided and protected. And in doing that, I was smothering the very thing I was trying to protect, our family. I wasn't letting any air in. I wasn't letting anyone help. That was my breaking point, not the folder. That conversation in the dark, hearing the love and the exhaustion in her voice. I'd been so busy being strong for her that I'd forgotten to be with her. I'd turned us into a problem to be solved, a checklist to be managed. I'd taken the woman I loved fishing with on Lake Minnetonka and turned her into my co-pilot in a slow-motion crisis. The cost? I almost lost those last good months. I almost turned my children's love into a burden. I almost let my relationship with Jenny become entirely about pills and porch steps and pretending. That's what was at stake. Not my independence, our connections, the easy laughter, the unspoken understanding, the simple joy of just being together without a shadow hanging over us. I got lucky. I found that folder. Jenny found the words in the dark. We caught it before the silence and the worry did permanent damage. But it was a close thing, a real close thing. And that's what I need you to understand. This isn't about giving up. It's about letting the air in. It's about looking at the road ahead and admitting the bridge is out, so you can be the one to choose the detour. It's about shifting the logs so the fire can bloom again. When I finally understood that, everything changed. The fear didn't go away, but it got smaller. The sadness about leaving the house was still there, but it was clean. It wasn't mixed with shame or stubbornness anymore. It was just change. And change I could steer. So I made the choice. We made the choice. And let me tell you what happened after that. So I made the choice. We made the choice. And let me tell you what happened after that. The relief didn't fade. It settled in, like a good deep breath after you've been holding it for too long. The move wasn't easy. No change that big ever is. But it was ours. We were driving the bus. Here's what I learned. Sitting here 3 months later with Jenny knitting by the window. I learned that my biggest mistake wasn't getting older. It was pretending I wasn't. I was so determined to be the same Don Robinson who drove the number 6 line through a Minneapolis blizzard that I refused to see the new road conditions. The ice was there, the visibility was poor, and I was putting everyone I loved in the passenger seat of a bus I was no longer fully equipped to drive. That's not strength, that's stubbornness, and it's a dangerous kind of selfishness. I thought holding on to that house was holding on to my independence. But real independence isn't about clinging to a building or a routine until your knuckles turn white. Real independence is making a clear-eyed decision about what comes next, while you still have the clarity to make it. It's choosing your next chapter, not having it chosen for you by a fall or a forgotten stove or a folder in the garage. I almost lost that. I almost let my love for my family become a burden to them because I confused love with never needing help. What I should have done was start the conversation myself 2 years ago. The moment I felt that first real pang of uncertainty on the porch ice, or saw Jenny look at the stairs with a little hesitation, I should have turned to her and said, "What's our next adventure look like?" I should have used my curiosity, the same curiosity that made me want to learn every back route in the city, to explore what our lives could be like with a little more support. Instead, I used my determination to build a wall, and my family was on the other side of it, worrying themselves sick. So my advice to you, if you're my age, or if you're watching this thinking of your own parents, is this: don't wait for the talk. You start it today. If you're over 75 and you've had a close call, or you see your partner tired, and to the children watching, I know you love your parents. I know you want to do right by them. But if they're like I was, stuck in that defensive pride, sometimes the kindest thing you can do is not to have the secret meeting, but to hand them the map. Say, Dad, I heard about this place with a putting green. Thought you might want to check it out with me. Make it an exploration, not an intervention. You can't force them to see the road, but you can point out a few interesting landmarks along the way. I have regrets. I regret those 6 months of tension. I regret the sadness in Jenny's eyes at that birthday dinner. I regret that my kids ever felt they had to be my parents. But I don't regret being here. From this room, I still go fishing with Tom. Jenny and I play cards without the background hum of household worry. Sarah visits and we talk about her roses, not my prescriptions. The kids come to laugh, not to inspect. We gave that back to them. And in doing so, we gave ourselves a new kind of freedom. The freedom to just be Don and Jenny again. You still have time. Maybe not to avoid all the stumbles, but to choose how you respond to them. You have the power to turn a looming crisis into a planned transition. Using that power is the last responsible act of being a good parent and a good partner. It's saying, I love you too much to make my aging your problem. This channel, from what I understand, is full of stories like mine. People who've lived a long time and learned a few things the hard way. If what I've said today rings true for you, I'd be honored if you'd subscribe and hit that notification bell. Maybe something else I figure out down the road will be useful to you. And leave a comment down below. Tell me, are you facing this kind of crossroads? Are you the parent hesitating at the top of the stairs? Or are you the child hearing the worry in your sibling's voice on the phone? Hit the like button if this story resonated with you, and please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes it takes a stranger's story to start a family conversation. If you've got a story of your own, something you learned through living that might help someone else find their way, there's a form in the description. Share it. Your hard-earned wisdom might be the map someone else is desperately looking for. A book that helped me wrap my head around all this later in life is called The Gift of Years by Joan Chittister. It's not about giving up. It's about embracing what's next. I'll put a link in the description. Don't wait until you find the folder in the garage. Don't wait until you become the ghost in your own kitchen. You have a seat waiting at a table in a life you can still help design. The menu might be different. The room might be smaller. But the people you love will be there, smiling, relieved, and ready to just enjoy your company again. All you have to do is decide to sit down. I'm Don Robinson, and from my room at Maple Grove, I'm telling you, it's a good seat. Take it.